Hello and welcome to the next episode of the PowerLess podcast. In this episode, I talk to Alizon and Ben, both the bass player and drummer of the band Calva Louise out of London, UK. We talk all about the start of the band, how they are all actually from different parts of the world, both Venezuela, France, and New Zealand. The three members, along with their other band member, Jess, who's the vocalist and guitarist, who is not on the recording with us today, but Alizon and Ben break down their newest record with me, Edge of the Abyss, which is out now for when you see this recording. Absolutely fantastic record. It's a great concept. There's a lot of cinematic elements, a lot of breakdowns, alternative metal influences, as well as a little more alternative rock, a lot of melody, a lot of screaming, a lot of aggression, a lot of solemnness throughout it, as well as the narrative that we get into a lot within this podcast recording, where they kind of break down a little bit of the sci-fi and kind of other world and doubles and all these different narratives that they've put into their music, especially singularly more with this album, but throughout all of their releases. This band has put out some of my favorite material over the past couple of years. Their record that they released in 2023, which they call a mixtape in this, and they kind of explain why, but I personally love it. I think it's a very cohesive record called Over the Threshold, was in my top 10 in 2023. This band is a band I've been a big fan of for a long time. So I was absolutely ecstatic to get them on to do this recording with me. We did record when it was a little bit later for them in their neck of the woods in London. So I really appreciate them taking their time to record with me the day before their album is released. So yeah, I really hope everyone enjoys it. This is the 100th episode of the podcast. And so I wanted to make sure to have on a band that is both near and dear to my heart. Absolutely fantastic band to break down what will likely be in one of my top spots for a top 10 of the year of 2025 for this record. We talk about that. We talk about their upcoming tours that they'll be doing, with a headlining tour in the United States, as well as supporting Stray from the Path on their final European tour. So we talk about all that. All those details will be in the show notes below. You can follow Calva Louise on all social media at Calva Louise. And that's CalvaLouise. You can follow the podcast on all social media platforms at The PowerLess Pod. Email me at thepowerlesspod@gmail.com. Support on Patreon. You can do that as well. You can buy merch as well. We've got things like the logo that's in the back on shirts and mugs and hoodies and things of that nature. There's also, you'll see me wearing it in the recording of this today. There's my band Dead Inside has put out hoodies from our song Riot Gear that say "May Thy Riot Gear Chip and Shatter" on them, which will be donated to the National Immigration Justice Center to help out migrants and immigrants that are being dehumanized and targeted within the United States currently by the federal government. So I would really appreciate if people check those things out, as well as obviously following Calva Louise and supporting them with this new release, whether you stream the music, pre-save it. I guess you can't pre-save it if it's already out now, but listen to it on streaming, buy their merch, buy physical copies, and everything in between. This band is absolutely fantastic, very genre fluid, very intentional with what they put out there. Their music videos we get into are very DIY and also very expansive and high quality, that Jess really puts a lot of time into, both with the script and production end of things, as well as the editing. So yeah, absolutely fantastic episode to talk with Alizon and Ben. I really appreciate them taking all the time to break this down with me. I really hope you all enjoy the episode, and more importantly, enjoy the album Edge of the Abyss, which is out now on all platforms as well as physical copies. So without further ado, with all my rambling that I tend to do on these intros, here's the conversation I had with Alizon and Ben from Calva Louise on the PowerLess podcast. Thanks so much. All right, I'm here for the next episode of the PowerLess podcast. I think this one's going to be episode 100, actually, with the band Calva Louise out of London. Although I know from reading your background, everybody from the band is not only from not London, England originally, but not even from the country. So we'll get into that a little bit. That's always a fun origin story for you guys, I think, and pretty original. But let's go ahead and just start with both of you and just kind of introduce yourselves for people that haven't heard your band before, and what you do in the band.
Sure. Well, my name's Alizon. I play bass.
And I'm Ben, and I'm the drummer.
And we're from the band Calva Louise. And Jess is missing, who plays guitar and keyboard and sings, but she's with us in spirit. And yeah, we're a three-piece sort of alternative metal band based in the UK. And we're all originally from different continents.
That's right. I was going to get into that a little bit here to kind of kick things off. Obviously, what we're mostly going to talk about today is Edge of the Abyss, which is your album that comes out tomorrow from us recording this, and this will probably be out the same day or the Monday after. First and foremost, listening to this record, I was fortunate enough to get it ahead of time to listen through the whole thing a few times before I could do this. I've been a fan of your guys' band for quite a while. I think I found a clip from Opportunista before you even put out Over the Threshold, and that was actually one of my top 10 albums of that year of 2023. So I've been a big fan for a while, but this album I think is like next level even to that record, which I thoroughly enjoyed and am not shitting on in any way, shape, or form. But Edge of the Abyss is first and foremost just like a super, super awesome album. I think it like builds on the cinematic feel that you guys had already started building up a little bit from the previous releases. So yeah, just really happy to have you guys on and kind of break this album down. What I like to do is kind of, if we can, do either, not necessarily doesn't have to be a track by track, but kind of breaking down the album a little bit in detail from production to your thoughts on it and the background and everything in between. But before we get into that, I'd like to do a little bit of an icebreaker if I've never spoken to a band before, and just kind of ask both of you, tell me, it could be just one band or one artist, tell me what you've been listening to a lot lately. What's been kind of your Spotify on repeat or the equivalent of, whether it's like a local band that you're into, one that's open for you or you've opened for, or the Beatles or whatever the case may be. Just kind of tell me what you've been listening to.
Yeah, cool. So I've like Straight from the Path have just dropped an album, so I've been listening to that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah.
And I've been getting into Ghost a lot recently as well, actually. Late to the party.
Yeah,
yeah.
Ghost is one I like come back to and then like fall away from. You know, some of their songs absolutely grip you, and other ones you're like, this feels like, not to shit on them at all, but like a little bit of just like glam rock, which is not my thing. But then the next time you check out a release, it's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, and the Stray one that's going to be a hard one to beat for album of the year for a lot of people, but your album might be a contender. So yeah, great picks, great ones.
Yeah, we're gonna get to hear it live as well, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah. It's gonna be wicked.
And then Alizon, go ahead and tell me what you've been listening to.
Right. I mean, there's nothing that's been on repeat really, but I've had a couple of recent discoveries from, like, I don't really go and check out French bands, on purpose, but Jess showed me that this French band called Grandma's Ashes, which I thought was really cool. Got a lot of Queens of the Stone Age vibe, great harmony, great riffs. And then we had another band give us a shout out in an interview called Imparfait, which means imperfect in French. I've been kind of listening to them, and they're really, really cool as well. So these are my last two discoveries.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't get to find out, obviously, from being from Midwestern, in Illinois, Midwest in the United States. I don't get to hear about too many French bands. So you just gave me some homework to check out. So that's awesome. That's my favorite thing to do here. Well, thanks for telling me that, guys. Obviously, it makes sense to check out, like you said, Stray. I was going to ask a little bit later, but pretty cool that you're getting to play with them and open, be one of the supporting slots for what will be their final tour in a lot of ways, at least in Europe. So that's got to be pretty exciting, right? That's a pretty awesome opportunity. I think your guys' bands would mesh really well live too,
Yeah, it feels. The funny thing is that, when they offered us to join the tour, we had no idea that it was the last one, and it was.
Yeah, they hadn't even announced it publicly or anything, and so we
found out with everybody else at the same time as everybody else, and so that makes it even more special because we get to be part of it, which is a big honor.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're the best. And while that's a little bit bittersweet, that's a pretty special thing to be a part of a band's like, a band that I think is, has never made like overarching like mainstream success, but I think the people that listen to them love them, type deal. And so that'll be a special thing to do. And again, I think your bands will mesh really well together on a bill. To kind of go from that before we get into the album, I know you've probably had to talk about this in every interview you've ever done, like I said, but it's because I think it's an interesting story compared to a lot of bands that I'll talk to where they either met in high school or they all grew up in the same area, or maybe they met on Craigslist a little bit later in life or something. Just kind of talk about the background for your band of people that aren't familiar of where you all each came from and how the band got together to create Calva Louise.
Right. Should I start?
Yeah, you start. I'll take over.
So it starts with Jess. Jess grew up in Venezuela, and so she started making music, playing music, making music, writing songs, and kind of started wanting to go to England, because there was so many influences from England, like in the music that we listened to. I mean, that she was listening to. So, her dad's French, and so when she was 16, she moved to France because it's close to England, right? But it was easier at the time because she started to finish school, and so she moved to France at 16, and she ended up in my school. So that's where I'm from, the north of France, Normandy. And then we were in class together when we were 17, and we just connected straight away because she was the first person I met who was actually, you know, dedicated to make music their life, which, I wanted to find people to play with, but never had with that level of dedication. And so we started playing music straight away together. And then after 2, 3 years, um, yeah, she was like, well, till we move to England then, like, that was the plan. And I was like, well, yeah, why not? I didn't speak English. It was just, moving with nothing. We had no money. We didn't know anybody in England. So we just took my little car and then just did like a little back and forth between London and Normandy for a while. And we were like trying to find anywhere to play on the scene in London, like open mics, little bars, you know, meet people, meet musicians, trying to understand how the music works, and that's where we met Ben.
Yeah. So we met. I was playing in a different band, and our bands shared the stage. So we met at a venue called the Underbelly in Hoxton in London, and yeah, we just made friends there on that night. And actually, we couldn't we couldn't understand each other because at the time Alizon didn't speak English, so we were just like. So I made I made friends with Jess first, and then yeah, like one day we exchanged information, and she called me up one day and asked me to help out with some drums on some demos that you guys needed drums for. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll jump in. So I learned the songs, and yeah, and then it kind of went from there, really.
It's worth noting Ben grew up in New Zealand as well.
Oh yeah, forgot that part. So my mum's a Kiwi, and my father's English, so I'm like half as well. But I grew up in New Zealand, and then moved to London with them when I was about 15.
Yeah, it's just I know. Again, I referenced earlier. Every single interview I've looked up for you guys, everyone asks you that question. But again, I don't think too many people have a background like that. I gotta ask, when you first came to England from France, and you said you didn't speak English, didn't speak the language. I'm just curious to ask, like, what was it like for you, culturally, and also just like building up a band and a project while also being in a culture where you're not able to directly speak to a lot of the people that you might make connections with or play at live shows with and things of that nature. Was that just like a hit the ground running, so to speak, and you just had to pick things up quickly, or what was it like for you initially when you started doing that?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, fortunately, Jess could speak English, not as well as she does now, but she could still speak. And so she was doing the networking, meeting people, and like I was just standing there, But yeah, I had to just pick it up straight away because I had to find like a job, and to pay the rent and to like. So I found like I was fitting furniture to people's places. I was driving around London fitting furniture, uh, and it was a very hard three month, I'd say, where I used to go on Google Translate and write scripts before going or calling people on the phone, or like just going there. I just always just have to prepare my conversations ahead of time. And obviously, most of the time it didn't go as planned. So I was just like,
Yeah.
what? But yeah, I think, when you're there and you don't have a choice, and, you just learn quickly. I think most people who, move to a different country with a different language could attest. You just, and also I really wanted to speak English from the start, even when I was young. So it was just a perfect opportunity to just throw myself in and learn.
And now he speaks
Well,
better English than anyone we know.
probably better than me. Yeah, that's what that's a little for somebody that, like, I've thought about that if I ever moved out of the United States, like, how the fuck would I ever communicate with anybody? But that's true. Like, when I talk to somebody and they're immersed, you either learn pick it up or you got to figure something out pretty quick. So that makes a lot of sense. So kudos to you for being able to kind of push through all that and hit the ground running with all that. another kind of thing overarchingly before we get specifically into the record is kind of the cinematic, like I referenced earlier, the cinematic and narrative elements of your music. I think not just in the story, which we could get to a little bit. I know there's a lot involved with that Jess does with the kind of scripts and the editing and VFX. It's all very DIY for you all. But we're in kind of the element of even just having like these cinematic elements instrumentally in your music. You know, you've got a lot of keyboards and a lot of kind of symphonic elements that make things sound like a movie score in a lot of ways in your music, along with the alternative and new metal elements and everything in between. Was that just kind of something that worked naturally for you guys? Did you take influence from kind of movie scores? Did you take influence from other bands that kind of had that symphonic element? Like, where did that kind of sound come from for you? Because I think it helps add like a unique element to your music that I don't hear from a lot of other bands sort of that would be in the similar genre, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, on the composition side, it'd be a question for Jess, but I feel like we're very influenced by movies in general. You know, we love cinema, we love movies. Jess and I met at like the school we were at. It was to study cinema, and another band that we bonded over when we were teenagers is Muse, which also has a lot of these elements. You know, so I feel like it's just influences from a bit of everywhere, and definitely influences from outside of the music, pure music genre as well, like movies, like you said. Because the movies are a big influence to the whole overall project as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I figured as much. And again, with like the narratives you guys kind of throw in these things, which I know, as you said, Jess kind of takes a primary hand in, but you guys are in the band, play these songs 1,000 times over. You got opinions on it as well and insights, right? So that's a really cool part of your music that I think keeps building more and more with each release you've done. Again, coming up to this this album that we're talking about today, Edge of the Abyss, which will be out tomorrow from recording this. Kind of, you know, from your last album that you released in 2023, Over the Threshold, which again I referenced earlier, is one of my favorite releases of that year. Was there a whole lot of just natural growth when it came from the last release to this one? Did you kind of take any different directions? Just kind of overarchingly, what was the I guess the influence to the record specifically, and kind of the changes from Over the Threshold to the new record?
Okay, so I think like sonically, it's definitely an evolution and a build on Over the Threshold. It's always like our first record's very different, you know, to the sound we're making now. And I think it's always been a gradual progression to a point that's closer to what we've always wanted the sound to be, you know? So in that respect, I think it's a growth and a step closer to like how we've always wanted to sound. Then yeah, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, well,
essentially-
for the album, basically, Over the Threshold was a mixtape because it was built little by little, song after song. So the process was like very DIY. I mean, it's always been DIY, but you know, we're just recording everything at home. Jess writes the song, and then she passes the demo, like the project, to us for us to do our parts, like, you know, drums, bass, um, and maybe some backing vocals or something. And then we worked with our friend Mazar for Over the Threshold in Italy to, you know, do the co-production and the mixing. And then once the track was done, we were shooting a video, we were doing, you know, and then after like a year, or I don't remember exactly how long, but then it was like, oh, well, there's enough for like, you know, an album. So we put it out as the mixtape. And then for this album, we had the chance to work with Gareth McGrillen from Pendulum and Knife Party, which was like amazing. Like, he's such a genius, like such a
legend.
He got in touch with us after the mixtape came out through socials because he saw some of the videos that Jess made, and he wanted to get involved. And so he co-wrote 2 songs on the record with Jess, and he co-produced and co-mixed as well. So all these influences kind of helped the sound to progress and to get to the next step. He was giving us lots of advice on how to do the best, because we recorded the same way we did the mixtape at home, because there's just can't afford to go to the studio, and also it kind of works, you know, it kind of worked for us at that time. But he really helped us get the most out of our situation with the basic equipment we had, giving us loads of advice on how to, you know, record best. Yeah, so Gareth's influence, and then he brought in Dean McCarthy to master it, which also helped, one more layer of, great mastering and last finishing touches. So yeah, I'd say these were like the next step that made this album, hopefully a step above the mixtape. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it's like the main difference, like in the process
Yeah.
from the over threshold to this. And I guess yeah, like in general, the mixtape thing, it was, yeah, we never sat down and said like, let's write an album. It was just song by song, like you mentioned. And then for Edge of the Abyss, it was like from the onset, it was like, okay, album, So I guess that's sort of the differences between the two.
The process was still, funny enough, the process was still quite, how would you say, not chaotic, but like kind of chopped up, because we had fragmented. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Because we had to go on tour in between. Jess was in the middle of recording, finishing writing.
Gareth was also on tour.
Gareth was on tour, exactly. So we had to work, because we were still working with Mazar for this album. So the stems were going from Jess to Mazar to Jess to Gareth, to Gareth to Jess to Gareth to Dean. And then every time there was like, loads of notes for every song. So sometimes, we had to get up at like in the middle of the night because Gareth was somewhere in the world, playing. And then he had a couple hours,
like
free.
Text us like, right, who's awake?
But yeah, it was all done remotely, which was, interesting experience.
Yeah.
But it worked.
Yeah, I guess that you kind of answered this question already, but your band, I think, is pretty notable for being very DIY and not just, this is kind of me hearing just exactly how DIY you even do the recording process, right? But your videos are very in-house. I saw that a lot of the people you have that are the actors in your videos, a lot of them might not even be professional actors. They're friends of yours or people on a, like basically like a videography team for you, for lack of a better word now. Yeah, Jess has a lot of hand in that. Have you found that going so DIY, even as you've grown the band and grown your platform and everything in between leading up to this release, do you find that that's kind of like, I don't know, maybe you don't have a different way because you've always done it that way, but do you find that like the DIY approach just kind of helps you be a little bit more of a scrappy and adaptable band than say waiting for a big studio, working, setting aside X amount of weeks to be somewhat, like kind of that other side of the spectrum when it comes to the production process? Do you think that's benefited your band in a way? Do you think that's just what you had to do? Just kind of what are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's always been sort of born from necessity, the DIY thing. There's always been things we want to do, and we haven't had the budget or the means or the location or whatever it is, so we've always kind of thought, how can we do it without, or like rather with what we've got, so how can we push this? Like, can we do makeup ourselves? Can we, so it
Props to Bill.
props, everything. It's yeah.
So the whole, I mean, I guess you talk about a bit about the story, but the whole band, carries a storyline underneath the music, underneath the albums, the release, the videos. There's a whole storyline that's kind of like the sci-fi, that has different worlds, different doubles, different timelines. It's like, so, um, so Jess started writing the story when she was young, and so it's always been really important to find ways to convey the story and to tell this from different point of view according to our means. And so, very early on we had no means, obviously, but we still wanted to find ways to tell that stories. And so that's why the earlier releases are more abstract in terms of storytelling. It's like there's elements there, but it's harder to kind of understand what's happening because telling a narrative is very complicated. Yet it's very rigorous. You have to be very strict and technical. We tried working with different people and stuff, but sometimes when you want to do something, you can't just wait to find the right people. You just need to figure it out yourself. So we were just let's just try to figure it ourselves, let's try to see if we can do it. And so we got like we spent like all the budget of a music video budget from our previous record deal in a camera to be able to film everything ourselves. And then that's what we've been doing ever since, hopefully getting better at it. But it's still very DIY because video is very expensive. Renting gear, crew, everything is very, very expensive, and we still don't have, any means. But at least we got the attitude. Jess will write the scripts, and then we'll figure ways to do it. We'll just figure ways to do it. All the actors are our friends. They just like half of some of them, a couple of them are like actually actors, like they act in other things and they do this professionally, but most of them don't, and they're just our friends, and they've been doing so great because they take, they put everything, all they can into it. They really, really care and do a great job. So it's been possible because of all these people that help us out and come and act for a couple of days. But yeah, we still do. The videos are still very much a DIY endeavor. So Jess will direct the videos, and then we'll just be shooting. It'll be just us and our friends, just with the camera and the lights, and just figuring it out, making it work, building props in the garage, and
Yeah, that's it.
and then Jess takes the footage and she edits it all and puts all the VFX just on her own on a computer upstairs. She'll spend weeks just working away, making these crazy things happen. Yeah, it's a big it's a big part of the project, and hopefully now, especially with this album, which has several music videos that are a direct continuity from the mixtape as well, it's more understandable than ever to follow along the story, the characters, what happens, So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have to say, but again, like I said, big fan of your band, so I'm going to say just positive things for the whole time that we're doing this. But I was surprised when I found out I think it was after Over the Threshold came out, and I saw a few of the videos for, I think, Opportunista and Third Class Citizen. And things like that it was so DIY, because the production value looks better than like some of your favorite like bigger budget music videos, and I think a big part of that is that you can make it, Jess and all of you, with what you do, the way you make it, it's very sci-fi looking. You can probably add in a lot more like CGI elements than maybe somebody else would, or different VFX and things of that nature. But that was like truly an impressive thing that kind of brought me, to say something of it. It brought me in a little bit more to the band, even as someone that's not like a big music video person. Mostly I listen to music on a commute or whatever I'm doing. Kind of brought you into a storyline. You could tell it was narrative based, like you said before, a little more abstract. These videos now you can see in the descriptions kind of like a short background on what the storyline is. And they're very high production value. So kudos to you guys for keeping it DIY and still making it very, very, very like high production looking, even if you're kind of, like you said, run around with lights and cameras on your own. It doesn't come off that way. So that's big props to you guys. But I guess like for people, before we look at some of the music aspects and a few of the tracks here for the record, could you kind of, for someone that wouldn't be familiar, I know you said that Jess writes the scripts and the narrative, but I'm sure you're very, very familiar with it, obviously. Could you give people a little bit of a background on what this narrative is that you're talking about? Because it kind of has created your music into concept art in a lot of ways, and a concept album, right? So kind of give people a little bit of background of what the story is for your music.
Yeah, so well, there is, like a premise to the world of the story, and then for specific release we follow a specific storyline of characters. So the premise is that there is the real world, and the people in the real world actually have a double in a different world that is superposed to this world, just in a different layer. And then basically they aim to reconnect and like meet each other. And so every character's like a very different journey on that path. And so, for example, for this record, we see Louise, which is the main character, and we see a first like glimpse of her double, because there's people are unaware that they have a double somewhere until there is a connection that's made, and then from now on, they aim to like go and find who it is. But in these other worlds, there are other entities that also have different, agendas, and so it all gets in the way. There's you could do infinite storyline essentially, but for this record we follow Louise and Johnny, who appears as an older commander in the mixtape in the fractal world. That's one of the other worlds. And then for this record we go back in the 90s to him when he was young to see why and how he ended up as an older commander in the fractal world when he started as a 26-year-old in the real world. So yeah, we meet some of the characters in the 90s to understand more about what happens in the future.
Very, very cool. Yeah, that's... Yeah, no, it does, and it just kind of shows how, you know, it's basically like you said earlier, like a sci-fi novel or a sci-fi epic in its own right, while kind of bringing in different elements of things you could probably pull from reference-wise from either sci-fi, horror, or whatever else, other things that kind of have these ideas of doubles and different worlds and different dimensions and things like that. That's awesome. Do you feel, again, I know that you said that Jess is primarily the person that spearheads the initial songwriting with the demos and things like that, but do you feel for your guys' ends that that kind of having that narrative structure and kind of that more concept element drives the music in a way that otherwise wouldn't, if you all just got together to put together some great, you know, alternative metal, alternative rock songs? Do you think it kind of also has a hand in changing the music composition itself a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think because Jess is the creative genesis of both the story and the core songs as well, I think that that's cohesive in her mind and her creative output. And I think it wouldn't be the same if the three of us got in a practice room and jammed the songs out from scratch. I think it would be, you know, be completely different. So I think, yeah, absolutely. I think it helps shape it.
Yeah, it's an internal part of it. Like, you could appreciate one without the other, but in essence, you know, they get created at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just another element to kind of you know, influence and shape things on a different path, or putting a little more thought process into it, other than like 3-minute long like banger of a song, right? You can kind of have these different elements that shape it in a different way. Again, this album, I can't say enough good things about it, Edge of the Abyss. I'm not going to make you guys obviously talk about each track at length, but what I would maybe like to do with you guys, since you know, I appreciate your guys' time and doing this with me, in your, I'm sure, very busy schedule leading up to tomorrow, is maybe just, you know, I've got the track listing here. We've got Tunnel Vision, WTF, Aimless. I'm going to mess up the Spanish ones pretty bad here, but Loque Veo, I don't know, Impeccable, Barely a Response, The Abyss, El Umbro, La Corriente, Hate in Me, and Under the Skin. I'll go to each one of you and maybe just pick what your favorite song is on this album, if you had to pick one, and tell me, you know, the background on it, you know, why it's your favorite, and what you hope, you know, people get out of the record, I guess, as a whole for each one of you.
Yeah, start if you want.
Well, it's not fair. You can't ask which one is the favorite.
Well, then I guess you got to break down 3 of them. I don't know. Yeah,
It changes all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Yeah.
That's the thing. It's different. I feel like it's funny because when we record it, we don't record all the songs at the same time. We record maybe like 1, 2, and then, you know, the next few days another 2, or, you know. So I think each song gets its own focus at certain times, and then when the album was finished, like, you know, last year, maybe like September, October, and since then we've been practicing to get some of the songs to stage, and I feel like every time we bring a song to stage, it's like you're rediscovering it, and you're like, oh my god, this is my favorite now, because you sort of go back into it, you dig deep, you analyze, you break it down to be able to perform it, you know, to figure out what you're going to do. And then that's what happened to me, like at least 4 times on this album. I think first one was Aimless. First time we kind of decided to play it live, I was like, this is amazing, because I love how it it flows in between so many different vibes while still being cohesive, and it has this quattro and this little rhythm in the middle. It's just so fun to play live, and at the same time it's got those massive drops with screams that just hit so well live. And then recently, I think it was Hating Me that I'm the most excited about right now, because we're going to play it for the first time in 2 days at 2,000 trees in England. So yeah, I'm super excited about this one. And yeah, again, I wouldn't have picked these two when we were recording the album, but now they've become the most exciting for me right now, but I'm sure it'll change.
Yeah, it's definitely a different beast, like playing the songs like when recording and playing them again for live. It's a completely different paradigm that you're in mentally, because like, there's when you're recording in for the studio recordings, I don't know, there's definitely that creative aspect to it. For the live things, certain part, not all the time, but sometimes things change, or there's in the studio recording there's different layers, and live we have to pick what we're gonna do. So it's the approach is completely different, and like in terms of enjoyment or our favorites, it's just it always changes, even throughout the recording process. I don't know about you, but like there were definitely some that were more like I want to say like enjoyable to record than others, and then again that shifted as well, even throughout the whole mixing process. It just changes all the time. So I don't think it's like asking a parent what a kid is their favorite.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, for me, like, okay, so currently for me, live, I think Tunnel Vision is probably one of my favorite songs to play live. Hate in Me as well. I thought that would be, personally for me, I thought that would be a more difficult song to play live than it is, but it's not as difficult as I thought it would be, and now it's great fun to play. And yeah, I think, yeah, Tunnel Vision is probably my current favorite.
Tunnel Vision is one that, like, for me, I always say on the show when I kind of break down albums with people, it tends to be 9 times out of 10 that either the first track or the last track for me ends up being my favorite on a record, especially when someone's like planned it out, like you all have, obviously, with the track listing and the narrative and things of that nature. Tunnel Vision, I think, like, again, you'd have to get back to me, same deal as a listener. 2 weeks later, I'll probably have a different answer. But Tunnel Vision's one that I think just hits the ground running in such a fun way that it really sets the precedent for the whole record. Especially, you referenced the screaming a little bit on Aimless. I think that's the one where it's got some of the lower screams that I kind of heard really prevalently for the first time with you guys. It felt like this record in general went a little heavier, not that the music, again, you didn't have screaming and breakdowns and stuff on the previous release, but was that just kind of where the music went naturally for you guys? Were you just listening to more heavy music as things went on? You just wanted to explore a little more? It just felt like when those kind of like more, I guess you'd say, guttural vocals hitting some heavier breakdowns and much more like syncopated, rhythms and things like that came in. It was like it felt like it fit, but it was definitely like a heavier end of your music. Was that just kind of how it went naturally, or I don't know where I'm going with that question, but yeah, what were
Yeah, it definitely felt very natural. Just she's been working on her vocal and stuff like for a long time, and so now she can do those crazy screams. And yeah, it just felt right. And I think the first time we heard it, I think we probably had the same reaction. We were just like, and yeah, it just felt right. That's what I like about the band in general, is that there's no boundaries in terms of creativity. Like there's no telling what Jess is gonna come up next, in terms of music. Like the next demo, it might be something completely different, but it'll still be great. So that's why it always keeps it exciting.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think like as a songwriter, I feel like Jess is now at a place where she is unrestricted and she can write whatever she feels like, and that's great, and I think that is reflected in this record and will continue to be reflected in future releases. And I just think it's great, like Alizon said, it's full of surprises, and it makes it interesting, and it's great.
Yeah, it's a big ebb and flow dynamically with this record, because I say that, there's these heavier elements, and then some of the other songs are very, very like, you referenced Muse, or you could talk about even like some almost like indie rock influences in some of the other songs, that I think it makes it for, again, sort of like a cinematic flow, which is cool, because you're not going to go balls to the wall the entire time. You're obviously going to add in some different elements when you're telling a narrative that also fits, like, what you're trying to convey emotionally and things of that nature. So thanks for going over that. One other thing I wanted to ask about the record, you've incorporated this a little bit, and I know it would come from Jess's origins from Venezuela, But you've got 4 songs on here that are in Spanish. I guess I know you all do backing vocals. Do both of you speak Spanish? How has that been, I guess, like in general, to kind of do the backing vocals for sort of a different language that maybe you hadn't spoken too much before? I just find that kind of like an interesting dynamic when it comes to live performances, right?
I mean, Alizon does more backing vocals than I do. But from the few Spanish backing vocals that we've had to do, I haven't found it too much of a challenge. It's just about learning it. It's like any part, you know. And I think you just learn it and you practice it until it's right.
Yeah, I have to practice pronunciation. Usually, like Jess will have. When it comes to backing vocals, you know, Jess will already have recorded her vocals, so I just listen to it a lot and match the pronunciation, and then yeah, it's just fun. I can't quite speak Spanish properly yet. I understand a lot, but so you know, it's the next step. We need to speak Spanish properly.
I don't speak Spanish. There's like a few words I can understand. You understand a lot more than I do. But I think, yeah, what we need is 2 months in a like
Yeah, you guys got to do what you did. Yeah,
country, and then we'll be sorted.
I think it's just kind of a fun and cool aspect of the music that you pull in Jess's first language into this. You know, that's obviously a big part of anyone's identity, is the language you speak, and first and foremost, the one that you learn first in your life. And so I think that's like a cool element to the music too, that kind of pulls out a different flavor of just, you know, how the vocal delivery is and things of that nature, and the songs themselves. I think that's another thing that kind of makes the music unique for this release too, right? Because you don't, even a lot of international bands that I'll listen to, whether they speak, you know, anything from Russian to French to whatever, they tend to still have all of their releases, if they're an international band, in English. So you don't often hear, you know, 4 songs on a full album release like this. And I just think it's a cool other element to the music that kind of gives it another unique flavor to it, you know?
No, for sure. I feel about the language that there are, you know, each language is just, it's got its own flavor, its own, you know, emotion when you're trying to write. I mean, you know, just would have to confirm, but I feel like some things naturally come in a certain language because it's some things are just not translatable. You know, it's like a certain words they just don't have any translation, and a certain language might be just right for a part for, you know, a certain moment. And so I think that, yeah, that's great that it's not a problem, that if she feels that the Spanish just feels right for a certain part or a certain song, then it works.
Absolutely. Well, again, guys, thanks so much for breaking down the record for me. Again, Edge of the Abyss coming out tomorrow, everywhere people can listen, as well as buying physical copies and things of that nature. Just one last question on it, overarchingly, for both of you. What are you hoping people get out of this record to kind of wrap things up? I'm talking about it. What are you most excited for, whether it's playing live or people hearing it for the first time? Just kind of tell people, you know, what you hope they get out of this, out of the first listen for it.
Okay, so for me, I think I would really like people to listen to the album, enjoy it, come to the shows, and I would just want to see people having a great time while we play them the new songs. And that's like, for me, that's like one of the most important things. So that's why I hope you know, people get out of it.
Yeah, and if you know, people listening find anything to relate, any kind of energy to, you know, any kind of positive energy to uplift, you know, any part of their life, then that's a win. Anything they can relate to, that, you know, gives them any sort of positive, you know, feeling, then great.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the album comes out tomorrow. I really hope everybody that's listening to this, or, you know, anybody that's just listening on streaming and it comes up on their release radar, give the whole album a listen, because it's definitely something I think is worth like front to back listens. You know, as you said, obviously with the concept and everything, it's also a very cohesive record. I think a lot of the songs complement each other in a very unique way from one to the other. What's going on for the band going to 2025? I know we already talked about the Straight from the Path tour. What else is going on after this album is released? What can you tell the people is going forward with the band for the rest of the year?
Yeah, well, we're actually off to the US for a month in September. We're doing a tour over there, and we're playing with Mike Stead
and SixSense.
SixSense, yeah.
And so we'll be covering a lot, not everywhere, obviously,
Yeah.
but we'll be doing West Coast, Midwest, and East Coast. So hopefully, we'll be playing nearby most people. So it's just super excited to be coming back to the US for like our own tour, you know.
Yeah.
Because we love playing in the US. It's always so much fun. We found like people are always just so, you know, and like grateful that we come all the way from overseas, which, you know, for us is kind of the opposite. It's like, well, thank you for the opportunity to come, you know. And some people, you know, drive hours to come to the shows.
People in the US travel greater distances to see bands they like than people in the UK.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm hoping to catch the show that comes through nearby in the area myself for that tour. Of course, as we said earlier, you've got the Straight from the Path tour coming up for their kind of finale in Europe. So yeah, thanks so much for going over this. It sounds like it'll be a jam-packed year for you guys in a great way. I hope you can still catch some sleep at some point, you know, between now and the end of the year as you hit the ground running. But just last two questions, just plug where people can find the band, what you guys have going on, socials, all that good stuff. And I always play a song at the end for people to check out for the first time from a band. So you guys just need to pick a song from the record to play at the end of the podcast as well.
Should we go with Tunnel Vision?
Yeah, let's go with Tunnel Vision.
So the video for Tunnel Vision is also coming out tomorrow as the record's coming out. So that's like the last kind of narrative music video for the album. And it's a big one.
Yeah. And then in terms of socials, we're in all the usual places, all the usual streaming platforms. If you go to calvalouise.com, it's got all the links there, and then Discord.
And then Discord, we like to plug our Discord because
yeah, I'm in that. It's a good time in there. Yeah, people should definitely join in on that. So yeah, thanks so much for going over that. Of course, all that for everybody listening will be in the notes below on YouTube or wherever else you listen. We're gonna listen to Tunnel Vision off of the new record from Calva Louise, Edge of the Abyss, out tomorrow. So when this is out, the record will be out. Thanks so much for doing this, guys. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
It was great. Thank you for having us.
Oh no, can you stop and to know the dumb times? This life shall be good!